Hello all, welcome to our channel. Today I will read you a story named The Procurator from Chandamama Kathalu. Let's get into the story. At the time when Brahmadatta was the ruler of Banaras, the Bodhisattva was employed as the king's procurator. The procurator's job was to buy the various properties and commodities that were required for state purposes. He had to be an expert in estimating the value of things. The Bodhisattva would buy elephants, horses, gold, silver, and so on for the kingdom and pay the merchants who brought them. As procurator, the Bodhisattva was very capable, so that the royal stores were always filled with the right things and the best things. He was also very thoughtful and foreseeing in his purchases, so that the administration was never held up for the want of a particular commodity, which was urgently needed. He was also very fair minded in his dealings with merchants and traders from other countries, so that the name of Benares was respected in far off places. Now, King Brahmadatta was a miser. He thought that his procurator was paying too much for everything and squandering away the state monies. At this rate, I shall be bankrupt in no time, he said to himself. The next act of the king was to dismiss the Bodhisattva and appoint someone else in his place. This he did in the easiest possible manner. He opened the window of his chamber and looked down. There were some of his attendants standing about. He selected one of them at random and ordered him to come up. When this unknown and insignificant fellow came up, the king told him, "From now on, you are my procurator." The king hoped that a common fellow without any rank or status would buy nothing without higgling and haggling and would be more economical in his purchases. But this particular man was quite a fool, and the king didn't know it. The new procurator could not distinguish between a donkey and a horse. He was an expert in offering astoundingly low value for anything he had to buy. The merchants who came from far off countries could hardly kick up rows with the king's official, so they used to sustain huge losses on state purchases. In his anxiety to buy cheap things, the new procurator bought useless and unwanted things. These began to accumulate in the royal store. Even when some of them were stolen, no one felt their loss. The foolish procurator could not guess what commodities would be required in the near future. Administration was often held up for want of something which was urgently needed. Above all, the name of Banaras acquired a very bad reputation abroad, and good merchants stopped going to that city for fear of procurator. One day, a merchant arrived at Banaras with 500 horses of very good breed. The king came to know of it and instructed his procurator to buy them up. The procurator called for the merchant, looked over the horses, and fixed their price, a measure of rice. The merchant was astounded but did not protest. But straightway he sought the Bodhisattva, the ex procurator, and told him what had happened. The new procurator seems to be a queer person. I depend upon you, sir, to see that I get justice, the merchant said. The Bodhisattva pondered over the problem for a while and said, "When you go to the court tomorrow to receive the value for your horses, ask the procurator what he is going to pay. When he says a measure of rice, ask him what the value of measure of rice is. Let us see what will happen next. I too shall be in the court." The merchant put his faith in the Bodhisattva, thanked him, and took his leave. Next day, in court, the merchant addressed the procurator and said, "Sir, you brought from me 500 horses of the best variety. May I know before witness what I am going to be paid for them?" Why, a measure of rice, of course. I told you yesterday, replied the procurator. This reply amazed everyone in the court, including the king. The merchant put his next question. And may I know before witness what the value of a measure of rice may be? Ah, anyone can tell you that. The value of measure of rice is exactly equal to the value of the kingdom of Benares and her dependencies, said the procurator. Like anyone who is considered to be a good bargainer, the procurator was exaggerating the value of what he was paying and depreciating what he was buying. But being a born fool, he overdid it. That was all. The entire court resounded with peals of laughter at the stupidity of the procurator. Some of them even made jokes about it by estimating how many kingdoms each one of them could buy with rice stored in their houses, and in how many days a good eater could gobble up a kingdom, and so on. The only person who could not enjoy the joke were the foolish procurator and the ashamed king who employed him. When some of the courtiers asked the procurator to buy them a couple of palaces for a handful of rice, the king bent his head in mortification. The Bodhisattva decided to put a stop to this jocularity. He stood up and said, do not mock at a man for his ignorance. When a man is entrusted with a job for which he is not qualified, he is bound to make laughing stock of himself sooner or later. It is not his poor fellow's fault that he was made the procurator. The king raised his head and said, that fault was mine. O Bodhisattva, I have learned my lesson. No one can do wrong except the king. The king at once removed the new man from the job of procurator and put the Bodhisattva. Hope you enjoyed the story. Have a good day.